Coogs House. All right, could be the last Memphis game for a long time. What's got to happen to make sure it goes the right way?
You are Locked On Coogs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Coogs, daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach, Parker Ainsworth, here to break down all things Cougs. If you're a U of H fan or just a hater who came to step by, please be sure to subscribe down below. That way you get the latest on the Cougs in your newsfeed each and every day. We appreciate you making Locked On Coogs your first listen of the day. Welcome back to the YouTube channel. It's good to see you again. And yes, we're bringing you an extra bonus episode on Saturday morning to preview the Memphis Tiger basketball game tomorrow afternoon. Now, I have to say a couple things. One, welcome back to the YouTube channel. It's good to see you. I think I just said that a second ago. But remember, we get to 750 subscribers. We are giving away that jacket. We are close. So by the time you're hearing this, we have passed it. Yay, we're giving away that jacket soon. If not, make sure you subscribe and then like and comment on the video so we know who to give it to. If you have nothing else to say about Memphis or you're just tired of talking about Memphis, ready for the rivalry to be over after this weekend's matchup, tell us, I guess yesterday the question was, what letter is silent in the word sent? Tell us how you pronounce the word T-H-E. Now, in this preview, we're going to kind of look, it'll be a little bit quicker because there was a full preview of the last time we played Memphis. And frankly, part of me feels like a lot of it's the same until I'm in a couple weeks. And Memphis does look fairly similar. But I want to talk a little bit about what's updated since then and kind of incorporate some aspects of what happened the first time these two teams played. So we're going to go straight through with a little break in the middle, but all previewing Memphis all the time. I'd like to start with how that first game went and then kind of talk about any trends and things like that that could trickle out of this. But I will say that there's a whole lot more on Memphis from both before and after that game just a couple weeks ago, just further down in the feed. All right, so last game against Memphis, remember, Houston won 72-64. Big news in that one was Kendric Davis did not play. He had injured his ankle about less than 72 hours earlier on Thursday night, and so they played on that Sunday afternoon. He was not healthy enough. He did try to warm up. Looked like he might try and play, did not suit up. However, Malcolm Dandridge and Alex Lomax did both play. Those guys had both been hurt for a while for Memphis. So that was kind of, their like wild card that threw into the game. Neither scored a bunch of points. I would say Lomax did have an impactful game. He just missed all of his shots. However, the interesting thing on that one for Memphis was the emergence of Elijah McCadden and one. DeAndre Williams. I'm sorry, DeAndre Williams did the 20-point, and he had 6 rebounds, which felt like a lot more. But he did also foul out. It's like the physicality, I guess, was carried over there as well. In that game, though, and matching that physicality of Williams was one Juwan Roberts. Roberts, remember, had his career high to that point in 20 points. Also threw in 12 rebounds to make it a double-double. A big-time game on him. Jarace Walker had just 4 points, but also had his own 8 rebounds, 2 steals, and a block. Big physical game out of Jarace, even though it wasn't like the pretty finishes and shooting that we have somewhat grown accustomed to seeing. Marcus Sasser threw in his own 20 points, including finishing 8-8 at the free throw line down the stretch. Big game out of him, as it's becoming predictable. Notable thing on the Houston side of that first matchup was they kept really, really tight with the bench. Not a whole lot of guys coming off the bench. I guess admittedly it looks like 4, but Javier Francis played just 4 minutes. Terrence Arsenault played like what felt like a quick 9, and Reggie Chaney played just 13 because of the dominance of Juwan Roberts when he was in the game. On the whole, right, the starters played the bulk of this game, as I would imagine you start seeing as you get into more high profile, like later in the American Athletic Conference, and then certainly in March Madness later rounds. That's the way this team, I think, will play those tight games, is you come in, if you're not hot, if you're not defending well, right back out, right? In this game, I thought it was interesting to watch them play because Memphis opened up after I had previewed that game, talking about how little they shot from 3. They went just 6 of 15, but that percentage was notably higher than their season average. The season average to that point was closer to 32, and that 6 of 15, if you're, I teach history, but if you teach math, right, that's a 40% three-point percentage for the day. And we're going to talk in a moment about how they've played since Houston, but that is like what kind of kept this close, that in the efforts, I guess, like the hustle plays out of DeAndre Williams. Houston did, I don't want to say got a favorable whistle in in Houston in this game. If anything, I'd argue that it was a little slanted, but Memphis did lose a lot when DeAndre Williams got in foul trouble, right? Like, I'm not saying he shouldn't have been in foul trouble. I'm not saying those weren't fouls, but they did lose a lot when he was on the floor, especially without Kendric Davis on there to kind of right the ship. Houston did force Memphis into 18 turnovers, and I think the conversation because of that after the game was, well, you win by 8, you force a team without the starting point guard and 18 turnovers at your home gym. What's it look like at their place when he's back, right? Now, admittedly, Kendric Davis is not a high turnover guy on the averages, right? Like, it's not like he's averaging like 8 turnovers a game or something and is therefore, this a liability or something like that. He's averaging just 3.3 turnovers. This guy was player of the year in the conference last year when he was at SMU for a reason, right? Like, this is not like some scrub. However, Houston has turned over good guards in the past, and we've seen against some higher profile teams, Kendric Davis does turn the ball over some when faced with like intense pressure, and Houston's got a few guys to throw at him. So I don't know that criticism of the first game is fair, and I said that after the fact because you're assuming Kendric Davis plays a perfect game, like a game well above his averages, and also you're assuming that like all those shots that Elijah McCadden played very well and hit 20 points, right? That is around what Kendric Davis is averaging. And so while Elijah McCadden, would have still had 8 or 9 points probably if Kendric Davis plays, it's not like he would have just like added 20 points to the roster. Some of those shots came from somewhere else and not just a net add. You don't just add them on top of the total. Elijah McCadden had just 2 turnovers himself. And so I also think it's pointing out, like, in comparing point guard play between the last game and the next game, McCadden's 2 turnovers are as low as a point guard is realistically going to have against the pressure Houston plays with. And to assume that Kendric Davis would have had less, I don't think is fair, especially, again, when we've seen him play against Power 5 competition and had some touchy turnovers, right? I will say in this game, the interesting thing is that Alex Lomax played 29 minutes and Malcolm Dandridge played 6. Dandridge did have 2 points. Lomax did not have any. As you've seen them grow on and seen this team continue to grow in Memphis in the time since we played them in the last 2 weeks, there's a couple interesting things. One, they continue to play close games. We mentioned going into the game against Houston, Memphis was 20-6, but 11 of the 21s had been by single digits, right, under 10 points. They have won 3 games since and lost obviously the Houston game. And in 3 of those 4 games, counting the Houston game, the difference has still been single digit. They play close games. That's just the only way Memphis seems to know how to do things. And I want to get into more of what that means in a second. But first, I want to make sure I tell you about our buddies at FanDuel. Now, FanDuel is the #1 sports book in America, and it is March, and that means it is time to look at your sports books. It's also midway point in the NBA season. It's perfect time to download FanDuel. All the basketball going on all the time. It's America's #1 sports book, and you can get a no-sweat first bet as a new customer up to $1,000. It's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. They can bet on everything from the money line to point scores and threes drained. As I told you guys yesterday, they are putting Houston at plus 100 to make the Final Four and plus 600 to win the whole thing. I think if you're betting either one of those, you ought to also be betting the other, right? You don't get to win the championship without getting to the Final Four. That seems like a fairly obvious statement. And we both know that if Houston gets to the Final Four, that's just 5.6 miles from campus. And Marcus Sasser is 49-4 in the city of Houston as a collegiate athlete. I'm hedging my bets there. I'm putting money on them to go all the way, and I'm telling you to do it at FanDuel Sportsbook. FanDuel lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with the same game parlay as well. So don't miss a chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, so I said I want to talk something about Memphis since we played them last. And what I do think is interesting in looking at this is that, honestly, they've gotten better. I think Houston's gotten better too. But one thing they've unlocked that I think they started to find in that Houston game is with Lomax and Dandridge on the floor and more downhill attack, they get more kick-out threes, which are easier shots to hit. A kid named Demaria Franklin hit 2 of 2 from 3 in his 23 minutes against Houston. He's not necessarily always a 23 minutes a game kind of guy, but without Kendric Davis, their guard rotation was a little bit different, right? I say that to say that, like, they also had DeAndre Williams pull up and hit 2 threes. He's not typically that type of shooter either, But in the games since Houston, right, against Cincinnati and against Wichita State, and then against SMU on Thursday night, they shot the ball relatively well from three across the board, certainly better than they had on the season. And they're starting to tap into that more as they're getting more space to drive downhill, right? When you add Dandridge and Lomax, even if it's off the bench in like the 15-ish minutes role that kind of have both settled into since that Houston game, it does seem to have spread out the floor some for them, where they're running a high-low with a pick and roll on the weave. So we had like a lot of guys in the lane at once before. And frankly, that means that doesn't quite suck the defense down the same way because you don't have the guys outside to catch and shoot. They're spacing it out and having the guys outside to catch and shoot more. So when you're Kendric Davis's or when you're DeAndre Williams's or whomever do get downhill, you've got more options to more release valves, if you want to think about that way, to kick the ball out too. They're not doing a whole lot of anything crazy on offense. They frankly did beat Cincinnati, Wichita State, and SMU each by kind of out-athleting them. Defensively, I imagine they will stay in the press because they feel like that gives them the best chance. Again, their press, if you don't recall or don't remember from the Memphis game, is they keep calling it a run and jump, but it's like a 2-2-1 with like man principles. And what they're really trying to do is make you take a lot of the shot clock up before you get into your offense. If you take 12 seconds to get inside of 27 feet, that means you only have 18 seconds left to run an offense, right? And then theoretically taking a rough shot. They continued to not, I should say, force other team into turnovers a whole lot, right? They still rank in the bottom, 324th. So in the bottom section of forcing teams into turnovers. However, what they are doing is forcing you to take rush shots, contested shots, etc. They continue to play high-scoring games, right? Memphis was giving up as many points as anyone in the country. And in these close wins, I mean, it's 83-78, 76-73, right? Like they're going to give up over 70 points, whether it's home or road or indifferent. And so I think Houston should, again, settle somewhere in the 70s again, much like they did the first game. The interesting to me is in the first game is Sasser and Shead seem to have a decent time with the press, and neither one turned the ball over too terribly much. Juwan Roberts had a couple they could put on him, but with intense full court pressure, having a total of 5 turnovers from your backcourt, while it's uncharacteristic for Houston, especially given like how well they've played as of late, it's not with the amount of pressure being put on them by high-level defenders. I don't actually think that crazy. They're playing a much more high-speed game, and Memphis plays a very, very fast game relative to Houston. Houston's one of the bottom teams in the country in terms of pace. Memphis one of the fastest teams in the country in terms of pace because of the like speed with which a press impacts the game, quick shots, one shots, etc., going back and forth, right? I say all that to say that this game will look similar in some ways, the pressing, those, so on and so forth. I imagine Houston tries to exploit the Juwan Roberts matchup. I wonder if they get Jarace Walker more in some block-to-block kind of actions too, get him those short corner isolation plays we've seen where they run a floppy set through so the two guards change sides, and then a block-to-block screen that frees him up in the short corner on an entry pass. I think some of that stuff really kind of open him up in a way that, like, I don't know if Memphis is going to also guard Juwan Roberts. How do they guard? Like, where do they put their defenders? And the other piece of this is I've really enjoyed watching. If you've listened to any post-game show, you understand. I love watching Jarace Walker distribute the basketball. I think the vision he has for a guy his size is so tremendous that if he isolates and they double down from somewhere, that's easy money to me. I think that's got to be how they do it. This game was hyper physical the first time. Houston shot 23 free throws. I mean, at least some of those were down the stretch when Memphis finally trying to get the ball back. But Houston shot 23 free throws, and DeAndre Williams fouled out. Like, this was a tough physical game. I imagine even though Memphis is a little bit more spread out, more perimeter based now, again, they went from shooting making 20% of their points from three to now they're close to 30 in just 4 games. Like, it's a steep increase in how many points are coming from behind the arc for them for such a short window, for sure, right? I feel like it's still going to be a physical game because it's Houston and Memphis. What's fun about Houston and Memphis is that this rivalry is 2 of the, if you want to call it, 3 teams that kind of have run the American Athletic Conference the last 10-ish years, right? You can go back further and find the Cheney teams at Temple or what have you, but on the whole, when you look at the programs in the American Athletic Conference, and just talking about like the programs in general, Houston is a historically good basketball program, right? Memphis is a historically good basketball program. Are there lean years in both? Yes, but historically, they've got great history. You could also very quickly look at, like, Wichita State had a run there where they appeared to be on their way to becoming one as well. I mean, they had year in, year out of like deep runs in the tournament, the Fred VanVleet kind of thing, all that kind of stuff, right? On the whole, Memphis and Houston have kind of anchored the basketball side of this conference. Frankly, they've had fun football games against one another too, with both teams being able to put out future pros seemingly regularly, right? Which is not common always in these American Athletic Conference sized conferences. Houston's moving to the Big 12, and Memphis notably got left out of said move to the Big 12. Now, if the conference expands to 20, you and I can talk about it at a later date about like, does Houston need to add Memphis back into the mix in that instance? But regardless, Houston got picked by the Big 12 to come join. Memphis did not. That's certainly added fuel to this fire, as it has in the SMU rivalry, as it has in any other instance across the conference, with the exception of Cincinnati and Florida, obviously, right? It's also a rivalry because they're both good in this conference. And I think the fun thing about this game is it'll be physical, it'll be tough, it'll be fun. And frankly, it's the best basketball. Joe Lunardi continues to have Houston and Memphis as the only two American Athletic Conference teams in the tournament. I think he's maybe right, and that's what will happen. You and I can talk later about what should happen. I think that, truthfully, Tulane is also that kind of good. I know Temple is the one that got us. I digress. I think that the American Athletic Conference is a little bit better than people give credit for. But this is seemingly, I mean, Houston's won the conference already, and the conference tournament is next week. So in some ways, this is for nothing. But in some ways, like this rivalry, it's for everything, right? And so because of that, I anticipate you see a incredible effort out of Houston. Now, if someone like does, knock on wood, tweak an ankle, obviously you sit them because, like, what's the big deal? Just a regular season game, right? It's not push things, be crazy with it, etc. But Sampson has said the whole time he's not taking his foot off the gas. Houston doesn't appear to be taking their foot off the gas at all. They had an initial rough start, I guess, on Thursday night, senior night, right? Like coming off that emotion of the senior night thing right before. But after that, they kicked it into gear. I just anticipate this being a fun game for Houston and a wild environment in Memphis. Their last time playing Houston for who knows how long, right? Senior night for them or senior day for them, all those kinds of things. A fun one for sure. Things to look out for, things that I'm going to tell you to look out for are, does Houston continue to go to J1 Roberts early and often, right, and get him back to that career high level, because that was the matchup they exploited the first game? What kind of role do they want Jarace Walker to have in this game? Where are they fighting him on the floor, and what kinds of things they're looking to do? And then the impact of Kendric Davis, right? We talked at length about what he would bring to the court if he played in the first matchup, and then he did not play. But Kendric Davis, while it's easy to hate on SMU and Memphis, and he's played at both, he is a pro's pro. He is a great scorer. He hits tough shots. He makes you play. He makes your defense look silly at times. You're like, oh, how are you giving that up? It's like, if I don't give that up, I got to give this other thing up, right? He is a tough scorer and does so many things so well for Memphis. This is a Ken Palm ranked 36 team, and it is not one without him on the floor. I can tell you that right now. He is really impactful and powerful on offense. Defense, I think that, he's not Marcus Sasser and Jamal Shead, but he's certainly not a scrub either. He's a very talented basketball player. It'll be fun to see where, if they go with Shead on him or if they go with Sasser on him. If I go to their starters against Wichita in that matchup, oh, sorry, I lost the game just now, but in that matchup, you saw a little bit more like the matchup against Houston, except they added Kendric Davis in the lineup, right? They had DeAndre Williams, Kendric Davis, Elijah McCadden as the off guard, Chandler Lawson and Jaden Hardaway. They were still bringing Alex Lomax and Malcolm Dandridge off the bench. Those two guys that play pretty key roles, even though they are rotating off the bench. And so what I imagine there you see is that I think you put Sasser on Davis, although I could see why you'd put Jamal Shead on Davis. You put the other on Elijah McCadden, in my personal opinion. I think that you put you probably put Jarace on Chandler Lawson, and allow him to play some more help side kind of stuff, and let Jerron Roberts take DeAndre Williams. I would understand going the other way around on that. And then I put Tremont Mark on Jaden Hardaway. I think our advantage there is both Jaden and Tremont, but we'll see. I think the advantage in the first game turned out to be Sasser and Jawan, so what do I know? But we'll be talking about it all week long here at Locked On Coogs. Make sure you check us out each and every day to talk Houston Cougars each and every day, first thing in the morning. One note, and I said this on Friday because I didn't know if I'd be able to get out a preview or not today. My wife and I are going to see her family for some family stuff. going on, and so I can't guarantee that I get to watch the game live on Sunday. If you're used to interacting with me on Twitter and going through a game thread where I just like constantly feeding out my thoughts on the basketball game in a thread of tweets, I appreciate you, and it's been really, really fun to do those throughout the season. Those will keep going, obviously, after this game throughout the conference and national tournaments. However, we just have to go do some family stuff. So while we appreciate you thinking about us and those kinds of things, I won't be live tweeting the game. Just don't think it's gonna be able to happen this weekend. I will obviously watch the full game, hopefully without having any idea what happens at the end before putting out Monday's recap episode. There will be a recap episode up Monday morning, I promise. And I promise I'll watch the game from start to finish before putting it out there. It might just be in the middle of the night, Sunday night into Monday, just because we got to go do some stuff and won't be getting home till late. So that's what we're doing. And I am enthusiastically looking forward to getting to watch some Cougar basketball after what I'm sure will be an emotional weekend. So thank you all so much for tuning in Locked On Coogs this morning. It has been a pleasure to talk to you about some Houston Cougar basketball. If you want to talk all things Cougs, football, basketball, Rockets, the downturn they've had lately being 3 years now, the Astros, Texans, what have you. I'll talk all things Houston Cougars, etc. at Painsworth, where is it? Painsworth 512, PAINSWRTH 512 on Twitter, Instagram, and all your social media handles. Thank you all so much for listening to Locked On Coogs this morning. On Saturday morning, if you're looking for a second listen of the day, I'm going to recommend Locked On College Basketball because their weekend episode is always a preview of the big-time college basketball game. So make sure you go check that out as well. It's a great show. Andy and Isaac run it, and it's a very Houston Cougar-friendly college basketball show as well. So make sure you check that out. Thank you all so much. Locked On Coogs is a proud member of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team, or in our case, #1 team in the country every day. Go Cougs!